I want to bring my panel in. A.B. Stoddard, Mike Pesca, and Chris Wilson, who was the former research director for Ted Cruz's 2016 campaign. Chris, you know the impact of Beto O'Rourke. You know what it was like when he was up against Ted Cruz. So right now, Democrats, many across the board, are saying this is the great hope. And Republicans are saying the best thing he ever did was lose to Ted Cruz.
Well,
what kind of opponent is he?
He's an indefatigable campaigner. I give him credit for that. But I think you've got a lot of Texas Democrats right now sort of rolling their eyes at his activities in Iowa. I mean, he'll do a lot of events, but at least now he's doing events for other Democrats. And that's what really upset the Democratic Party in Texas, because he wouldn't go help campaign for others. And in fact, the Democratic nominee against Will Hurd yesterday was tweeting true to form about the fact that he was refusing to show up at one campaign event. I do think O'Rourke you've got to give him credit as a solid fundraiser. It'll be interesting to see what he raises in the first 24 hours, and in terms of the number of events he does. But he has an odd record run for president in the Democratic Party. He's very far left on things like wanting to abolish ICE, saying, hey, I support kneeling for the national anthem. But he was also the oil industry's favorite congressman from Texas in the Democratic Party, and he voted on the city council to use eminent domain to bulldoze barrios to help his father-in-law build luxury condos. So I think that it is an interesting record to try and couch in when you're running against Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and can he raise the same kind of money and generate the same kind of volunteers again in the Democratic primaries he could against Ted Cruz?
The El Paso revitalization was, I mean, it really actually did help El Paso. So just to address that.
It did. I mean, like, we do. I mean, to categorize this saying he went with eminent domain to wipe things out for his father-in-law.
Well, it didn't actually occur.
But, pardon?
It didn't actually occur. I mean, he lost the vote. So,
but there was a revitalization plan that he did champion, and it did help El Paso. Anyway,
the barrios were safe, though.
There actually are still people there who are upset by the vote. But yeah, that said, I think that when it comes to Beto, whenever the debate is on the style, he wins because he generally has good style. When we saw the president making fun of his hand gestures, not only who cares, he obviously connects to people in a very real, visceral way. I just don't know what his policy positions are. I heard Chris describe
But is it not early to know what they are? I mean,
I know what Elizabeth Warren's are.
Okay, when President Trump came down the escalator at Trump Tower, what were his policies except that Mexicans were rapists and my wife is a beautiful supermodel?
That is not a recommendation for what we want our politicians to
But it is somebody who won and became the president of the United States.
So the question isn't, can he win? Sure, he gets people excited. The question is, I would just like to know from a policy perspective where he actually stands. And I heard a couple of your descriptions of him, and it is true that in Texas, the oil industry liked him. You can also say, if you want to be a successful politician in Texas, you should get the oil industry to like you.
It's a fair point. If you're anti-oil industry and you're in Texas, I hope you enjoy being a private citizen. A.B., what's your take?
Fair enough. Well, what you can hear in Chris's comments, and I don't know that Beto O'Rourke is going to win the nomination or end up on the ticket because I don't know what Democratic primary voters are thinking these days and what they'll be thinking at the end of what is expected to be a 14-month primary that ends next May. But you can hear what Republicans think of Beto O'Rourke. They believe he's a threat to 38 electoral votes in Texas that would explode the map for President Trump. It's why the Club for Growth began attacking him in ads this week before he even announced, because they believe, and the head of Club for Growth was on the record about this, that he is a threat. And so that's why you see this Republican criticism of his early record. It's not a lot to criticize. There are some Democrats in Texas that are frustrated with him, but he elected a lot of Democrats in Texas. It was the lowest voter turnout in the country before 2018. He has woken up the new and lapsed Democratic or independent vote in Texas. This is why Texas is in play if he runs. On his policy positions, he's going to be intentionally vague because this is a long primary process, and we're not sure where the primary voters are going on Medicare for all. Some people think it was a mistake for someone like Kamala Harris to jump on the Green New Deal before it became sort of a controversial joke, right? So he's being vague on purpose. We'll see how the voters deal with that. We'll see how that unfolds in the debates. But I think it's probably a smart strategy at this point.
If Joe Biden enters the race, and more people think he will, he just met with Stacey Abrams, how does it shake things up?
I do think that he would be the front runner, but, he's been a bad candidate, a bad presidential candidate in the past. And I also think that, can I just say, vague on the policy as a strategy, I hate that. That is a terrible thing. And I do think that...
But is it a terrible thing? Because if you go deep on strategy right out of the gate, you can box on policy. You can box yourself in.
But A, so what? B, I don't think...
So what? You want to get the nomination. That's the so what.
But I think in a primary, you've got to convince... You know better than I do on this one.
I think the voters respond to someone articulating their positions and saying, here's where I stand. And I think the voters will more bend to the person who articulates his or her policies than find the person, shop around for the person who doesn't say much. And
easier said than done when you currently have a Democratic Party that's as divided as it is.
It is, but I think to run and be successful, I agree with Mike. You've got to be, O'Rourke, for him to win, has got to convince primary voters that he is, one, viable, because he did just lose his last race, and two, that he is progressive and far enough to the left. And those are things where you've got to take positions to prove that.
All right, well, they've got time. The 2020 race is surely in focus. We're going to leave it there. Up next.